Hello, I'm Doran Ellen Beldotan in Sfat. It's taken me a long time to be able to peel away a lot of falsehood because it is so taken for granted and so ambient that one doesn't look at it critically. And so that which is the most obvious is the most difficult to see. Today we are going to be speaking about the falsehood that is Christianity and the falsehood upon which it was based, which is the incorrect interpretation not of Jews but of the excrescents, the eruv, other Semitic peoples who attached themselves to the Jewish people because they wanted to be chosen, but were incapable of being able to live according to the holy tradition of the progenitors of Israel, the judges, the prophets, and the holy members of the house of David. So it is not Jews who founded Christianity, because no Hebrew would come to the erroneous interpretational conclusions upon which Christianity is based, but it was the eruv, the excrescents, those who thought they were Jews and whose descendants today think they are Jews, but who were not and were incapable of living according to true Hebrew Torah. It took me quite a while to, as I say, peel away the layers, because it was so commonplace, so taken for granted, that one finds it very, very difficult to be able to look at that which is taken for granted objectively and critically and be able to see what's wrong with it. It began to dawn on me that it was very bizarre that people who consider themselves Jews and who are considered Jews were referring to the Zohar to explain Torah to them. And it was strange to me that people were learning odd things in Talmud, things that didn't ring true. I was listening to some of the non-Jews, most of whom are Christians, saying that the people who were calling themselves Jews are not Jews. But the reasons that they were giving for that were not satisfactory in their mind. They're saying that it's because they're not black, because they look too European, because they're the converts of Khazars. All of these things didn't ring true because our religion is based on conversion. The original converts are Abraham and Sarah. So the fact that someone might be a convert doesn't mean that they're not Jewish. If anything, they're a Jew on a higher level than a born Jew because they chose to be. Our mother Ruth is a convert. So conversion is clearly not the problem. And while it's true that many Ashkenazi Jews look very European, so do many Arabs. And for exactly the same reason, they intermarried with Europeans. The Sephardi Jews don't look European for the most part. The Yemenite Jews certainly don't. The Ethiopian Jews certainly don't. And there are many Ashkenazim who clearly have Semitic parentage and still look rather Semitic. So I began to ask, how can they look Semitic and maybe not be Jews? Clearly from their behavior and from their inability to be able to interpret the Hebrew correctly, they're not Jews. So who are they? And suddenly the entirely obvious dawned on me. They are the descendants of Arameans. And that is why they look Semitic. And that is why the DNA tests show that they have ancestry in the Middle East. But they can't specifically say Hebrew. They just say it's ancestry in the Middle East. DNA tests aside, the final examination of who is and is not a Hebrew, that is to say, Yehudi, one of the children of Yisrael, of the Hebrews, is that they are drawn to Hebrew. They have an innate proclivity for Hebrew. And this had to be our first clue as to who is Hebrew and who is not. And as I have shown in videos that I've made with God's help in the past, Yisrael is Rashei Yehuda, the heads of Yehuda. The name Yehuda equaling 30 as it does is the letter Lamed. So the name Yehuda is contained in Levi. Levi and Yehuda are not separate. In fact, they are one and the same. And those who say that there is a Kohen gene that they have found among the Jews are basing that conclusion on a misinterpretation. The Hebrew moniker Kohen 725 is equal to Kol Ha'am, which means the entire people. So Kohen is not one tribe within Israel, it is the entire people. And Yisrael is Rashei Yehuda. It is also the heads of Yehuda. It is also Anachnu Beit David, we are the house of David. And so those who thought that they could break Yisrael down into separate tribes did not understand Yisrael because they were not of Yisrael. And this is the reason why, even though now they were given a chance to be fully submerged in a sea of Hebrew, they still prefer to learn in Aramaic. They still need an outside explanation of what the Hebrew says, not that it's correct, only the Hebrew explains the Hebrew, but they feel the need to refer to Aramaic in order to be able to understand the Hebrew precisely because they are not Hebrews. Yes? That is the giveaway. Those who could have wholly returned to a total Hebrew ambiance and chose to remain learning in Aramaic are not Hebrews. All of them. They think they are, they sincerely think they are, but they are not. Many of those Arameans then intermarried with Europeans in the diaspora after God kicked them out of the Holy Land for their heresy, for their inability to be able to be loyal to the house of David, which is the interpretation of Torah that is fully Hebrew. They intermarried with Europeans, or I'm sure there were rapes, and so they carry Germanic ancestry. And those are the people who say that Yiddish is a holy language. The Rashi lived in France, and he was completely fluent in medieval French. But he never said that French is a holy language, because he was not French. Those who say that Yiddish is a holy language are Germans. No Hebrew would make that mistake. No Hebrew would make the mistake of not being able to see that the title Mashiach is contained within mishpacha, which means family. Yes. No Hebrew is not able to see that the letter Mem and the letter Yud in Mashiach together equal 50, which is the word kol, kaf lamed, which means everything. The English collective is an edamen of the Hebrew kol, kaf lamed. So they would immediately see that the word kol is contained in Mashiach, that it has to be a collective, not one individual. And then when we look at the other letters that are in Mashiach, Shin and Chet, which is 308, that is the word karov, which means karov is family, and it's also that which is close. So Mashiach 358 is kol karov, everyone who is family, everyone who is close. Those who could not see that were never loyal to the Holy Family, are not descendants of the Holy Family, never wanted to be able to become capable of understanding Hebrew as only the Hebrews do. And that is Ruth's crowning glory. That although she was a Moaviah, She said to Naomi, whose name, by the way, Naomi, is Kol Ami. The nun is again Kol, and Ami, my whole people. She said to Naomi, your people are my people. Your destiny is my destiny. Where you go, I will go. That is the true conversion. She fully accepted the whole people, which is Israel, and the entire tradition. One of the things that's very interesting about Ruth, it is said that she hihit amtsa, that is to say, she struggled to convince Naomi of her sincerity. Himitametzet. Naomi sees that himitametzet, that she was struggling to be able to convince Naomi that of her sincerity of wanting to belong. Now, mitametz doesn't only mean struggling to do something. It also means to be adopted. So yes, there are kosher conversions into Judaism, but those who kosher convert have to be converted by true Jews, and they have to be completely sincere. Those who converted the Khazarians were not themselves Jews. That is what the problem is with the Khazarian conversion. Not that they converted, but that those who accepted them weren't themselves Jews. And this is precisely what the problem is with Christianity. No Christian has ever claimed that the original versions of the New Testament were in Hebrew. They say that they were in Aramaic, that Yeshu was speaking in Aramaic, and that those recording what he had said at the time later were recording in Aramaic or in Greek. But no Mashiach, no one who belongs to the Holy Family, whose entire being in this world is based on the study and elucidation and revelation of the depths of the Hebrew language, is going to speak and learn in Aramaic and Greek. Had Yeshu been the Mashiach, the first thing that he would have done is urge the people to go back to speaking Hebrew, learning only in Hebrew, learning only in Hebrew. And he would have revealed secrets contained within the Hebrew language that had not been revealed up until that time. He would have revealed what is called chidushim, that is new revelations, new explications, new interpretations, but from the Hebrew, not from the Aramaic. So the very fact that Christianity, from its inception, is an Aramaic and Greek-speaking enterprise, undertaking, means that it is already based on the incorrect interpretation of the Aramaic-speaking rabbis and their understanding of what Mashiach is, which is one individual, because they could not even conceive of a Mashiach being an intergenerational family. To them, there had to be one head honcho. We know that Christianity is essentially incorrect. Everyone who belongs to HaMashiach, that is the anointed family sets about revealing the truth of Hebrew. That's what the house of David does. The reason why the rabbis could not effectively argue against Christianity is because in order to do so, they would have revealed themselves for the fakes that they are, learning in Aramaic as they do, and Yiddish, which makes it even worse. So what the rabbinic heresy and the Christian heresy have in common is a basis of interpretational error of the excrescents, the eruv, the hangers-on, the wannabes, who cannot plumb Hebrew because they don't have Hebrew in their blood, because they don't have Hebrew in their genes. This is the reason why both of them are false. I have always found Aramaic very much like, and it was the lingua franca of the Middle East. Very much like French. It's like, what do they call those cream puffs that the French eat? Petit foie or something like that. Cream puffs. It's a very flowery kind of, it's got a lot of like, you know, kind of like clever expressions. It's all very cerebral. It's all very like, sort of like up here in a kind of a fake intellectual kind of way, and it has like these turns of phrase, very, very much like French. It sometimes happens that the Aramaic expressions have this particular turn of phrase that I want to use, and I will use the Aramaic expression. That happens. I think even in English people are familiar with the expression that an empty container has the biggest rattle. You know, that comes from Aramaic. So sometimes they have these very on-point ways of expressing themselves, but it certainly isn't a holy language, and it certainly is nothing to turn to for elucidation of the Hebrew. If you can't get the depth of the Hebrew in Hebrew, the Aramaic is not going to help you. As far as Yiddish goes, I have a sentimental kind of a feeling about Yiddish because it reminds me of my grandparents. It reminds me of my mother. So I do have a feeling about Yiddish, but I never considered it a holy language. It has a barb in it that no other language has, and very often it uses Hebrew words mispronounced in the precise opposite, in an ironic kind of a way, like tachshit, like broch, which I never liked. There's something very coarse about Yiddish, or some very coarse expressions in Yiddish that aren't really used in polite conversation, but everybody knows them. Everybody is influenced by them. So there are times when I need to say things in a very kind of blunt way, and I'll refer to the Yiddish to do so, but not because I imagine it to be a holy language. Hebrew is the holy language, and all of the Hebrews that were in the diaspora together with the eruv rav, together with the people who think they're Jewish and are not, grab the opportunity to be able to return to the Hebrew language, to Hebrew culture, to the land of our fathers and the language of our fathers and the learning of our fathers and mothers, of course. Of course. Sfateim shalanu. Those who insisted on keeping Aramaic and Yiddish long after they did not have to, revealed themselves as the eruv rav, as the hangers-on, as the wannabes. And it is by this sign that we know who is Hebrew and who is not. Thank you for listening.